at the world as we see it through a conservative view, except for our liberal here. But
Thank you.
let's start with introductions.
Hey Al, thanks for having me on. I'm Chris Wilson, current school committee member and planning board member.
Ed Bertarelli, thanks Al again, member of the Geriatric Authority, the Library Board of Trustees, and the Housing Authority.
First subject of the night. What would you like to pick?
Oh, you pick. They're all juicy. So
Start with the election,
Elections, yeah.
the upcoming election.
the upcoming
Yeah.
election.
Well, one of the reasons we sort of delayed the show a little, and I hope the liberal show didn't get too many on us in the thing, but we wanted at least to get to the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary to see what the lay of the land might have been as far as the Republican nominee and I suppose the Democratic nominee as well, although that's foregone conclusion, I guess, unless Biden pulls out. So we sort of know something of where the primary is going on the Republican side.
But what message, okay, we came out of Iowa, white dominated way back, went into New Hampshire again, and now going into South Carolina. But what messages did you see coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire?
Well,
I mean, certainly, yeah, the support's there for Trump, and more than anything, I think that there was the lack of confidence in the current administration and Biden, how everybody's afraid of the economy, or has high concerns with the economy and high concerns with immigration. So
Yes.
both states, same level of concerns at pretty much the same percentages.
yeah, and interesting, very different states. You say, when we buy into this white, non-white thing, we get into the whole thing of Joe Biden disenfranchising New Hampshire because he denied, New Hampshire wanted to keep their place. And Joe Biden said to the state of New Hampshire, the Democrat Party said, if you do it, we're not giving you delegates. Because South Carolina is going to be the first one because it's favorable to Joe Biden because of the politicians in South Carolina. But the interesting thing is, what the media didn't point out is there was no Democratic primary because they still don't know who won the Democratic primary from 4 years ago. That's how badly
But Ed,
it was managed.
Is that the reason New Hampshire got snubbed, or
Yes.
is it that Biden lost in New Hampshire?
No, he made a deal with Clyburn, the boss of South Carolina, the representative, who's like always number 2 or 3 in the House when they control it. He's an elderly gentleman, but he's a seasoned politician. He had made a deal before that he was going to move it up for the reasons that it wasn't representative of whatever.
Is that the reason,
Well-
or is it the economics?
Well, whatever it is, he did it. I mean, we could get into the intricacies of what's the economics.
Well, New Hampshire, if they were 5th or 10th in line, would they get 90%, 80% of the money being spent in there? Would they get 10% of the time? See, I always look at New Hampshire and being number 1 in the primary is an economic thing. It's a lot of pride, but there's a lot of money that goes into New Hampshire.
There is, but remember, Iowa was the first one. Iowa with the caucuses were the first ones before New Hampshire. But again, that's the media markets in each state are different. So if you're talking about New Hampshire, and we're getting off the subject, but if New Hampshire media market is the Boston media market,
Right.
okay, South Carolina media market is several different media markets in the whole, because it's a bigger state. But no, I think what Chris said is correct. 2 different states, Iowa and New Hampshire, both had the same level of concern about illegal immigration or immigration and the mess of the economy, and they were shown in both both the turnouts on the Republican side. I certainly, yeah. So
Now, Nikki Haley,
yeah.
what do you say about her
Well,
representation?
I'm going to support her in the primary. I don't think she's going to win, but I think she's. The only reason I'm supporting her, and this isn't a slam, is she's, I think, more electable than Trump. The Trump world may think he's more electable because they want him to be more electable, but I'm not sure Trump's able to reach out to the independent women and independent men, particularly since it seems to me one of the linchpins of the Democrat thing is they're going to counter the border with abortion. And in the last off-term elections, they were successful, like in Michigan and other states, with that issue because they felt the Republican position was extreme. So the only card they've got to play is the abortion card, just like, they've used other cards in the past, but, they're not going to really want to talk about immigration because what can you talk about? But I think that's what they're trying to hold out, and Nikki Haley would go against that. A candidate like that wouldn't fly because she's a conservative, certainly not in favor of abortion, but also not against certain procedures. So I think she would be a stronger candidate, but that's my only view. So.
Well, I think there's, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, I agree with Ed with the standpoint of like Nikki Haley, in front of the camera, her dialogue to the American voter is much easier to get behind than Trump. Obviously, Trump you never know what he's gonna say next, and sometimes you're just on your heels. And I feel like Haley's policies and Trump's policies are very similar. I mean, certainly, Trump picked her to represent the United States and the United Nations, so she can't be all that bad, even though, he's certainly is slamming her a lot. So, again, I look at her policies to be very Trump-like.
Yeah.
I like the fact that she's not, bordering on the age of 80 years old, which, certainly is something that scares me. But obviously there is that opinion that, her supporters, the big donors, would kind of sway her and maybe in how her policy would go in the future.
Yeah.
So.
For the Republican Party, she represents the pre-Trump style. I won't say older style, pre-Trump style. Aggressive
like the establishment.
Aggressive foreign policy. No isolationism, which Trump would want. No America first thing, because the fact is the world is so interconnected. And I think on social issues she'd much be more favorable. And I think she's also a representative of the Republican Party that would compromise with the moderate Democrats to get stuff done.
Well, to me, and I would support Nikki Haley without a question, because she seems to bring to us a lot of what Trump says without the mouth. I mean, I hate to say it, but I would be better off feeling better to support a Trump if he kept his mouth shut.
You and a couple of million people.
Right. Well, the Trump supporters have empowered him to continue with that, right? Because they applaud him whenever he keeps ramping his arrogance and that Trumpism up, right? So it just they applaud it. They want to see it. They feel like it's almost like the guy that they want him to beat Biden, right? They want him to be that next president, and they're willing to make those type of concessions for that.
Yeah, and it'd be like his personality seems to be the type that he can get away with calling Nikki Haley every name in the world, which isn't seemly for a man doing that to a woman, at least in my generation. I don't think it's seemly at all, but he does it. But if she said something back to him, he'd be outraged. Right. Well, why is she saying that to me? Well, there's a reason. And
But I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I like the fact that I don't see Nikki Haley playing the woman card all the time.
Nope.
She's going out on her merits. Mm-hmm. And that makes me feel a lot more comfortable with her.
Yep.
It's not vote for me because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I'm dang qualified.
Someone asked where her husband was, some idiot. And she goes, he's deployed. He's overseas.
I saw that.
Yes.
And, I mean, when you hear that, to have to deal with that in a family, and,
And run a presidential campaign?
That's what I'm saying. That's a special, and people went, well, you really didn't want that answer, did you? But yeah,
You asked the question.
Yeah,
you got the answer.
exactly.
Yeah.
And would you like, I guess whatever. But so
do you think she's going to be able to do it?
No, I think she's probably prepping for the next time.
I was going to say, I think
don't
28.
The election's unpredictable because, as we said a lot on this show, and I think the general public knows this, the media is very biased. And even the stories they pick and the headlines they pick and whatever, CNN and MSNBC are just not them. A lot of the local stations parrot their stuff. All of them, certainly in the Northeast, they do. You never heard one Boston station connect the crisis we're having with our budget in Massachusetts with the border. They talk about immigrants, but it's like the immigrants arrived up here by magic carpet from somewhere, and so that's that. But I think the way the primaries are set up and the way the Republican National Committee did the delegates, I think he'll win the nomination. But people just are so unhappy going to the grocery store. I hear this constantly. I mean, even if you go for one or two people, never mind a family, I can imagine what your bills must be like
Exactly,
for grocery
yeah.
bills. I mean,
It's not the same as what it was, that's for sure. It's
And I think
certainly
that's
higher.
one of the things that kind of slaps you in the face.
oh,
Forget who you believe, why, whether you're
yeah,
a deep red Trumper or a deep blue Bidener. Safeway makes the difference in my mind.
Oh.
When I go to Iandoli's,
Oh.
well, not Iandoli's anymore,
Shaw's.
Shaw's. When
Oh.
I go there and see what I'm paying today, I mean, I was excited that I went and filled my car up with $2.99 gas. That-
there's,
that-
It's been a
there's
long
probably,
time,
I
yeah.
challenge people to find a $2 item in the grocery store today. Maybe a $3 item is even rare, but $7, $8, $9 for an item that used
Well,
to be
look
$4.
at Girl Scout cookies.
But
I mean, how many times
I
did
won't
we
get into
buy
that.
boxes
Right.
that I can't eat because I'm too rotund? But they're the Girl Scouts. It used to be $3, then it went to $5. I just heard they're coming out at $7
not
a
surprised,
box,
right?
and the
Right.
Girl Scouts get 75 cents of it.
Oh my
Well,
goodness,
that's a real problem.
It's-
You just sit there and
Yeah.
say right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah,
it just-
And I can
everything costs
listen
more,
to,
yeah.
because when I go on the Liberal View, I can hear all the reasons why we're better off than Yugoslavia was, and
Huh?
that,
what does that have to do with anything?
well, they're dead. I mean, that country's gone, but the countries in Europe aren't doing as well as the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Philosophically, I can understand that, but when I go to Shaw's,
Well,
I still have a problem
yes,
laying
but
out
the
money for
countries in-
food.
Countries in Europe provide a vast social net that we don't provide here. Maybe in the state of Massachusetts we do, but if you're in France or England or Spain, health care, pensions, whatever, and they pay high taxes for it. But I would debate the question of whether we're better off. But ironically, I wouldn't think the liberal view would be America boosters, which strikes me as a little,
Yeah, but I think, Ed, what you turn around and say is 3 years ago,
okay.
I was at a point. Today, I'm at another point. Do I feel better or worse today with $3? And I'm excited that it's $2.99 a gallon.
It
Right?
just shows you
It's
how
down, yeah.
just shows you how the mind plays.
Must be an
out.
electric gear.
Yeah.
Election
You
year,
know, and the Girl Scout cookies going up to $7. And
Just,
But that's where, again, the media, certain parts of the media aren't even in this thing. When you see a made-up man or woman reporter on the national news, they're about as akin to an old-time reporter as nobody. Because these people are reading a script, and every one of them leads a life that's a privilege.
Well-
So in other words, they're not going to the grocery store and shopping. In other words, their lives are taken care of. So they can talk about, CNN talks about inflation like it's, oh, well, I mean, hey,
it's gonna
my
happen.
driver will take me to the Hamptons on the weekend and we'll be all set. And I got no problems, whatever.
But a while back, there was a statement made that every state is going to be a border
You
state.
got it.
And we thought, okay, this guy's a Looney Tune.
And who said it?
I can't remember who
Yeah,
said it.
yeah, but, well, probably Greg Abbott, but yeah.
All of a sudden, the governor who's saying that every state is going to be, I don't know who repeated it, but it got
Yeah.
played. And now all of a sudden, I mean, you're feeling it, because for 2 or 3 years, we made out pretty well as Milford. The state came through with $7 million each year incremental to take care of our burden of the migrants.
But not room, that's the problem.
But
Now-
Ed, at the end of the
But Ed,
day,
hey,
Right.
you sit there and say, for those 2 years, we did okay.
Yeah, but what's 2 years in the scope of things?
Well, now,
Well, yeah,
year
but
three.
Yeah, we're
And
in
that's
year
like
three,
talking about
but-
what last week was.
Yeah, but again, it's going right back to the cost of cost of goods, right? We know the cost of goods are up. I see it, right, with a family of four, as Ed just said. Like, can you imagine? Yeah, I don't need to imagine. I see it,
Yep.
right, on that weekly basis.
Yeah.
You know, the cost
Yeah.
of fuel, the cost of groceries,
But-
the cost
Well,
of
but
going
even
out.
take something
So,
like Woodland.
Yeah,
No, I find it hard to believe it was 8 years ago. That place is so big, it's gonna be a generation before we fill it.
not so much.
We were adding one child incremental per class per year for 40 years. And now all of a sudden, we're adding 200.
Right. I mean, it has, fortunately, this year has been pretty flat from the enrollment side. Within that flat, where 20 students leave, 20 students come
Yeah,
in.
but again, it's
so-
that transient.
Right, so we're seeing that transient
that
population,
doesn't-
so
yeah.
that comes with its
But it still
own
doesn't,
set
of course,
of
still doesn't help,
challenges
because, yeah,
within the
the little
schools.
boy
yeah.
or girl doesn't have
Right.
any kind of continuity, and
Right.
the economic pressures of moving somewhere, or daddy or mommy's getting a job somewhere or whatever, but obviously, again, I'm sure the viewers who listen to this show realize there's a direct connect between the disaster at the border and what's happening in not just Milford, but hundreds of towns in New England, all over the South, all over the West, and whatever. They were talking about up at the a ski resort in Colorado, and Venezuelans were driven up there by bus in the middle of the winter, and they're like, "What are we doing here?" They're talking about Venezuelans who were sent to Chicago, going, "We want to go back to Caracas," because the Venezuelans are legitimate political refugees because of the government that's
Yep.
down there, the crazy government.
Yep.
But it just shows you what's. And then again, what about the people at the border who are on the terrorist watch list, the ones from China, the unaccompanied males who are a predominant part of the group? What's going on? What is going? It's a time bomb, and it's no offense to the people who are in Milford, but it affects everything in Milford because we're not geared to that sort of growth in the
Well,
way
for
we were.
years, we've made out well with the hotel tax. We were netting $1 million plus a year in extra tax. Now, those 7 hotels, we were an obvious target. The state said, well, you got 7 hotels, we'll take one of them.
But again,
But
when you say we're in good shape with a tax, that's the problem in the thinking. Taxing anything is not a good thing, basically.
No,
yeah.
So-
Well, I would equate that to, we know that the state revenue is way down. Well, now, if we've put an immigration population in all these hotels, and now the hotels can't rent out those rooms, and now all of a sudden, the state can't collect that room and board tax.
well,
Right?
that's the,
So
Yeah,
is
but
that the reason
but
why
but
revenue's down?
But no, but the
Because-
hotels, and I know this for someone who owns one in New York, okay, former family thing, and people are set up to make a fortune because the state is going to pay these hotels.
Right.
Now, forget about the tax the town would get or whatever, but the state is going to be literally, when you hear some of the rates they're getting for a family in a month in a room, you would go, well, you'd be nuts not to, because you could basically take every room in
But
your
that's the
hotel.
hotel owner.
well,
But
yeah,
now
I
the-
mean,
now
fair's
the
fair. If I
state
own the
and
hotel, it's a
town loses
business.
out. Right.
I don't have any loyalty to Milford.
Right,
You
exactly.
come to me and say, you have 100 rooms. I will guarantee you full occupancy at list price or more.
Oh, list? No,
Yeah.
it's hundred, trust me, it's
Okay,
not list
but
price.
even if it was list price,
No, it isn't, so,
if I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
guarantee myself 100%
Yeah.
occupancy,
Yeah.
what am I going to
Why
say?
would I not?
Al, some of these rooms are renting at thousands a month to families, okay? I don't know what the deal with the Westin Hotel is in Milford, but the one in Franklin is a whole floor that's done, and they're thinking of going to the whole hotel. The rates are unbelievable what they charge, double, triple,
Right.
never mind what the going rate is. It's just, people come in and you're basically encouraging people to do. Now you have to have attendance there. Maura Healy
Well,
has
you gotta-
National Guardsmen there.
And you have to have food there because they're getting their food brought in.
Again, this is insanity. It can't go on. Come
Well, what are
on.
you gonna do, not feed the
I-
kids?
Oh, come on, Al, stop it. You know better than that. So, come on.
No, but I mean, the argument is.
Oh,
you
the
got this-
argument's everything, but who is profiteering from this? That's the point. Just like in Milford, when someone rents an apartment and has a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom apartment and rents a bedroom to a family and charges them $900, $1,000, $1,200 a month, okay, and pays the landlord the regular rent, and has a family in conditions where there's shared bathroom and shared kitchen, which I was told when the Board of Health put that rule in about taxing, going in every apartment and inspecting it because the sanitary code required so many square feet per person. Well, none of this is being inspected anymore. So how can anyone say that someone's leading a good life in a room in an apartment? And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about against anyone, but this is hypocrisy because people are profiteering, just like the cartels are profiteering, bringing people to the border and smuggling them across. There's a lot of money to be made in this awful
Well,
situation.
I'm also worried about
So,
resources from the state level. Now, we have revenue greater than last year, but nowhere near what was expected. I think we were 800 million short.
but why?
And immediately, but hold on, immediately, the governor has a budget to balance. She's 800 million short. Our
Well,
school chapter
okay.
70 money went from 7 million incremental last year to nothing this year.
Correct, yeah.
We'll get 4%, which is
4%.
better than
Right.
Yeah, but
nothing.
again, that's papering over the problem.
Oh, definitely.
That's papering. I mean, you were
100%.
talking as a finance committee chairman, and I understand that. But the thing is, it's much more fundamental than this as far as the quality of life in the town. Money when money was flush is one thing. Money when money's less flush is the same. But
Well, we're gonna have to go back to the school committee, the fire department, the police department, and say, guys, here's reality.
well, why in every special town meeting did we spend 10 or 11? We had all this cash. We spent 10 or 11 million dollars like drunken sailors, and no one said boo about it. Everyone got whatever the cookie jar was in October. It was filled. Now, I don't know what the.
Well, man.
Now my other question is also, now that you've got me going, is how much we used to allocate so much money to lower the tax rate. How much did we allocate last year to lower
5
that?
million.
Okay, well that should have been said because it wasn't said.
And I was gonna say, when you look at free cash, I truly believe our approach is the right one. And I'm biased,
Well, okay.
which says, okay, if we got $3 million surplus, and literally people will say, you tax too much.
Well,
Well, on a
but you-
$150 million budget, that's a 97% accuracy.
I know, but that's
But hold
again,
on.
what are you gonna do
You
with the
take
3
the 3
million?
million. To me, a third of it goes to our savings account, a third of it goes to tax relief,
Okay,
and a third of it goes to capital projects that we
Okay.
couldn't fund.
but I think this whole discussion's getting into the bushes of the intricacies in Milford, and we've got a couple of other topics we wanna.
But, go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, when you look at immigration, right, yeah, there's the local impact, there's the state impact, and then there's the national impact. So how
But now I'm amazed, because I
go to
heard,
the root of the problem,
I
right?
heard the Senate
National.
came up with a plan to solve the problem.
Baloney.
And there's amazing new ideas. Continue the wall. Well, that was
Well,
a.
it also was again the typical Republican senator and Democratic senator point of view, that it basically gave amnesty to millions of people. It literally, it's too complicated, but it was basically Mitch McConnell, whatever he's doing, is not handling the issue. Ironically, how is it that, I just say you have the questions of our liberal friends. How is it that when Trump was president, there was very little movement over the border? And all of a sudden, it collapsed. Now, Biden reversed every order, but also some news had to get to the people in South and Central America, in China, and
in 130
Venezuela.
other countries.
Yes.
You hate to say it on this program, but even before Trump, there was Obama, and Obama had much stronger immigration policies too, right?
Do you remember when,
he and I was
yeah.
shocked to hear this. He actually deported
more.
the most out of
Yeah.
every
Do you remember when Kamala said the cages? Those cages were there when Obama was
Obama
there.
was there, right?
Remember those cages the
so-
kids were in?
Right.
Yeah.
So for Biden to say that he's powerless,
Yeah.
all he has to
Well,
do is
he
go
is.
back.
But the
well,
thing
yes,
that
he is
the thing
powerless
that
because
hits
he's
me,
an
what I
abs, yeah.
don't understand is, for a while there was a movement to defund police,
Oh, well, yes. It's
and
still
then
there.
well, it's still there, but Minnesota, Oregon, you defunded police.
How'd that
Crime
go?
went way up,
Yeah.
and now you've got an administration saying, "Well, we've always been pro-police."
Baloney.
Right.
And the same thing with immigration. I just heard that part of the new bill coming out of the Senate was to continue building the wall,
Again,
50 miles of it, because that's what they've
50
got left.
mile. No, they've got a lot more than that.
Well, but they were selling off the materials
Well, of course.
Right.
at 5 cents,
Okay,
10
but
cents
go
on the
back-
dollar.
Go back to what you said about defund the police. Look at the impact that has on morale. Look at the impact the immigration thing has, and Fox pointed it out in Chicago, in New York, where there was a fight among immigrants, and the police attempted to break it up.
And they beat up the police?
Beat up the police, and the mayor said nothing, who's a former cop, and a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. And the Police Benevolent Association guy came forward and goes, well, what's going on here? The same way they found out that they moved the migrants to a location that was very inconvenient, way out. They demanded to come back. Then they found out there were 5 cars there. The city had given them 5 cars to get around in, and no one, the police thought they were stolen because there was no record of them. And now the cops are going, wait a minute, I live on Staten Island, should I get a car? You know, it's like, so all these effects of defund the police and all of this stuff have had a profound thing on the whole society. You know that. I mean, just to go back to Milford a minute, with these crimes in Milford, we just have to pray that no policeman is a woman is injured in any of this stuff that ever happens, because it's the Wild West out there, you know?
Well, it's pretty amazing because, you know, in Milford, the terrorism was my neighbor's dog did bad things on my brushes. You
Good.
never heard anything
Nice
serious.
dog.
Nice dog. But I mean,
Trained well.
seriously, 2 armed robberies.
Yes, but again, we got to the whole thing. Someone who was in a very responsible position told me about 5 or 6 years ago, no names, talked about the incredible amount of money, cash, in the immigrant community. And you look at home sales recently, you look at a lot of the businesses that have been bought in Milford, and you find, you know, a Brazilian person, an Ecuadorian person, or whatever, paying cash for things. And there's a lot of cash around because of the way the economy is. And then you have a lot of these businesses are doing a good thing. They're shipping money home, or they're getting money from here, your wire transfers, the way, you know, would do it. I mean, there's a lot of people, probably families in Ecuador and Brazil, who rely on money sent
Sure.
home. Yeah, for food and
And you know
everything.
something, I have no problem, and I'm biased, because my grandfather
Well,
came to Milford in '39, and he worked to the bone.
Yeah,
And what did he do with his money? Sent it home to his wife and 3 daughters
but again,
to give them a better
again,
life.
no one's,
It's-
this
yeah.
is, this isn't a
So
a
I have
negative
nothing
thing.
against
Well,
them.
well, no one's saying anything about it, but we're talking about, in those days, robberies weren't there, but when you know, if someone knows the store, and someone knows the business they do, like the Aroma store, which is right by my house on Beach Street, that was robbed, right, Sacred Heart Church, the Aroma Market, they knew that they handled a lot of money, because
yeah.
either, you know, it's a community where everyone talks about stuff or whatever, and they know. So if you're gonna deal with money, money's
But Ed,
available.
it reminds me of, I invite you into my house for dinner, and you start breaking my furniture. I feel I have the right to throw your bum right out the door. So the people who come here, put their head down, work like dogs to make their family
Yeah.
have a better life. I have compassion for them.
Yeah, but again, we
The
don't even have.
people who come in here and commit crimes, as far as I'm concerned, as soon as they're convicted, out.
Yeah, but again, the problem is that that doesn't even work, because people they go through the extraordinary expense of expelling people, then they're right back here. So the whole thing is, and this is why the Trump argument for his presidency is compelling. He solved the border. I guess like, no, how, you can't say anyone solved the border problem,
But
but
strong stance.
it didn't exist. The problem didn't exist to even a tenth of the extent, and here's a guy in there now, I mean, what did Nikki Haley say, the world's largest nursing home? No offense to people in nursing homes, but I mean, Biden is obviously.
But in the last 3 years, we've increased the population living in America by 1%.
Yeah.
In 1 year.
Incredible.
Or in 3 years.
And that's what.
And I would go back to 1939 when your dad came. I'm assuming he didn't just walk over the border from Mexico into Texas and
No.
here, right? There was a process, and I think that's where my focus needs to be, or focus on my opinion is yes, bring in those hardworking people, but bring them in legally, right?
But again,
And the process
that
is
needs to be
there.
done.
Yeah, but when
See,
you
the
have.
sad part is, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Ed,
go
but
ahead.
when I hear we need more laws, I don't buy it. We need to enforce the laws
But-
that we have.
But it doesn't
Right.
work when you have 500,000 people a year, maybe in the old thing, or 250,000 wanted to come in. When you have 2 and 3 million, nothing would work because, and this is the same way with the immigration. I mean, there were waves of immigration in Milford, obviously, and one of the largest was the Italian immigration from basically 1900 to 1925. Okay, like that right there. And those are 4,000 people anyway that came to a town. The population of the town went from like 9,000
to 12 or 13.
yeah, exactly. And of course, they had large families. But again, they were, as my own grandfather on the Irish side, he didn't become a citizen probably for 15 years after he got here, because I asked him one day, and he had a great brogue, the Irish brogue. He said, well, Eddie, do you think I worked at Draper's? He said I had a good job there, but he said, do you think that Draper Corporation was going to let me take a day off to go to Boston to become a citizen? You wouldn't even dare ask, because you know what the work thing was? 54 hours a week then. You work 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, and more. Yep.
But again, when you think about the Irish came, then followed by the Italians, then followed by the Portuguese,
In Milford,
then
yes.
followed by the Brazilians.
Right.
I mean, it's wave after wave
Yeah.
of hardworking people. And yes, in my mind, there was 1% bad Irish. There was 1% bad Italian.
Right. Yeah.
1% bad Portuguese. I hate to admit it, but yep,
Of course.
1% bad Brazilian. But again, the minute you exacerbate the whole thing by saying, now it's 3 million people, 1% of the United States is moving in.
Well, also when you have the cell phones and the information, crime comes here, and this is a good place to wash money, make money and wash it. And you have a lot of people in businesses around Milford where there's a lot of disposable money, and people are using it. Where the money came from, who knows? But the fact is that some of the businesses that are bought in our own town and other towns, they're bought with shady money. That's the only way to describe it, because, you look at people who paid off the books, okay? We have people who apply at the Milford Housing, and they have to show proof of income. Well, in some cases, they'd never worked above the table, because
They're working.
but for whatever reason, whether it's, their employer is exploiting them, and this is what they can get because it's a lot cheaper not to pay someone benefits or taxes. But again,
But Ed, I remember when I had a plant in San Diego,
Yeah.
a biotech company, we had a plant in San Diego. And it was made very clear to me that since the plant reported to me that if we hired illegal aliens, I was on the hook personally.
well,
I got to tell you, I made it very clear to my plant manager that free room and board on the state is not something I aspire to.
no, but again, that today is not even a relevant thing, because that's so far in the fantasy world now that,
But when I thought
So-
that my livelihood, my
Yeah.
existence would be challenged, I was very, very careful not to hire.
but again, unless you're on site today, like, again, you're in California, you basically have a stagnant birth rate in the country. It's that way in Europe. In China, it's reverse. China's facing their own catastrophe that way. So the infusion of population, for example, New York City at the last census went to 8 million people. Well, that's 1 million people that it had more than in the basically 2000, 2010. Well, that's immigration, and that's immigration from Asia, Africa.
But now, you're talking about enforcing laws.
Yep.
Talk to me about this whole movement of banning Trump
Ah,
from the ballot.
Well-
I'm confused because, was he convicted of insurrection?
in the press, yes.
Well, no, but I mean,
Court of public opinion.
forget
Some
that.
are public
In the
opinion.
legal
No,
system.
no.
So, if the Constitution says you will not participate, you will not, don't you get innocent until proven guilty?
Not unless you're him.
Okay, because
Well, I would also
personally,
say,
I don't like the idea that somebody else is making the decision for me.
What a romantic you are. That's unbelievable. Wow.
You know, if I don't trust Trump, then I'll vote for Nikki Haley.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
But or whoever it is.
well, that law is very interesting because it was put in, and then it was selectively enforced. And I'll give you an
Against the
example.
generals of the Civil
No,
War.
but I'll also
yes,
give you an
right,
example.
Right.
Okay, so they enforced it against Robert E. Lee, who, as far as you know, was a brilliant general who lost. Okay, it wasn't enforced against Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy. And you know why? Because he had been a United States senator before, and he became a very wealthy lobbyist after the Civil War. So the law was put in as a penalty to punish the South and supposedly punish these people who, and if they were military, hey, they were obeying, they just believed in what they did. And, the thing that, it's the whole thing of the whole slavery argument, and what was the cause of the Civil War, and what was the ultimate thing, and this and that. And, you get into that history, but for the court in Colorado, which obviously we see from the makeup of it, is a 7 Democrat, because they're political out there. 7
Yeah,
Democrats.
but didn't they
and
follow
it was,
the Russian model of first we execute, then we convict, then we accuse?
well, I mean, that makes
I
sense,
like
doesn't
that.
it?
That's a great model.
I
as
mean,
long as
come
you're
on.
It
the
just seemed
receiving
like
side.
And in China, they
Right.
make you pay for the bullet. They send the bill to your family. So the irony is that even there was 4-3 vote in Colorado. So 3 justices said, "What are we doing here?" So
Right,
And
to-
again,
to
okay.
try, I was going to say, to try to hold somebody off the ballot, it just shows that there are certain people in this country that are in panic mode.
But yeah,
It
that's
does,
good.
right?
And they don't- it makes you-
They are in serious panic
Yeah, and it
mode
makes you
that-
stronger.
That Trump will be the next
yeah,
president.
and it makes
So-
them stronger.
Right, so how the only way that they can prevent that is by saying, well, we're just not going to put him on the ballot. Like, well, wait a minute, it's a democracy here, right? He's, as you said, he has not been
And-
convicted of anything.
Now,
so
if he was
therefore, why should we
convicted,
pull
Yeah,
him
but
from the
that's
ballot?
That would be a
another.
different
That's
animal.
another.
Different
No,
story,
not even.
yeah.
No. That isn't even an issue because the superseding thing is the people who argue this state by state approach on the ballot are almost like the Confederates, because remember the Confederates said states' rights.
that was
Well,
one of the supposed main reasons.
well, it was. But the thing is, the federal laws on elections are superseding everything. So if these Democrats who don't certainly believe in secession, you can't have it both ways. You can't have the state courts saying one person can be on the ballot and one can't, and still say that your laws are that way. So that's the way I look at it.
I don't like, you remember Don't Tread on Me?
Right.
Well, but
It feels like, wait a minute, who are you to tell me who I can vote
But Al,
for?
this is so transparent that it's so. Maybe if you watch MSNBC or CNN 24/7, you'd think it isn't transparent. But to anybody who's not even vaguely political goes, "This is the most transparent thing ever." They're afraid of him. They don't want him on the ballot
Exactly.
for some reason.
And
They
they
don't
have
want
the
him.
right to not want him on the ballot.
no, wait,
but
no,
not
no.
the right to keep him off the
Well,
ballot.
that's the point. But when you do legislative, this is almost like overreach of a vast way of taking laws. Remember, when you think you can solve everything with a law, well, here they're trying to say a court ruling, and it won't work because it just doesn't work.
Right. Just because you don't like the guy, it doesn't mean that you can't have him on. You can't prevent him from being.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
well, like
you
the ballot.
cannot vote for him.
Right. Exactly.
But again, it's so obvious to us, but to some people, I guess it isn't.
No.
And
what's
how-
it called? Trump derangement syndrome or whatever? So, of course, they've had it for everybody. They had it against Bush. They had it against everybody. McCain, Romney.
No, Ed, I gotta disagree. To the degree that Trump faces it,
Oh, it's brutal.
I don't think Bush 1, Bush 2,
Well, no,
McCain.
you couldn't. It's impossible to compare it, but it was very similar. But it's been
Well-
ramped up. A friend of mine who's very non-political said to me, and I was shocked, because I never realized the media was as biased as it was. I just floated along. I listened to it, and then when Trump ran, I realized they were, because the first time, because remember when they was it 50 directors of intelligence wrote a letter saying that the computer, the Hunter Biden thing was obviously Russian disinformation, a lie. 50 people got to sign that. So what part of the deep state are they in? That's the point.
But now
Yeah.
we got a bill coming out of Congress, out of the Senate, not out of Congress,
Yeah.
that says it's going to fix everything. And one of the things I saw was build more wall.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but that's
50 miles of.
Yeah.
50 miles,
Over
okay, so
10,000
50 out of
miles.
1,000.
Yeah.
But the idea that, wasn't that somebody else's idea to build a wall?
it is. But
Yeah.
what's in the
Maybe
other
partly.
rest of the bill is that why these insane people are tying the border with Israel with Ukraine is beyond me, because this is where Trump is dead wrong about aid in his isolationism. The billions of dollars that are going to the Ukraine or Israel, okay, are not going to Israel or Ukraine. A vast percentage of those are going to the arms industry in the United States to replenish the weapons that they gave to Israel and the Ukraine already. We exhausted a lot of our stocks of weapons, Stinger missiles.
Well, something as silly as mortar rounds.
Okay.
There's no technology, they're dumb bombs.
Well, when they land on you, they
Well, no, but I'm saying. you had to-
artillery shells.
Artillery shells.
Right.
The 155 more.
Yeah, there's a plant in Pennsylvania. The guy has guards there to prevent it, and it's running 24/7. And then the government kept saying, "We'll pay you whatever." But what I'm saying is, this has aided our economic thing, because the defense contractors, Raytheon and all these others, have really.
Right, but how do you tie in the immigration bill with the
You don't.
foreign
You
spending?
don't.
That's the problem,
No,
right?
they don't.
Right.
There
You
should
know,
be
you had-
standalone
You had
votes.
HR2, which was basically a standalone immigration. It didn't it went through the House, but then
Yeah,
it got
yeah.
stalled out. And now the Senate has, from the Democrat side, they have their bill and they're trying to bring
And
it
they're
over
doing
to the House,
poison
right?
pills. They're trying to
Right.
go.
So they're
By
just-
the way,
yeah.
Israel is a no-brainer. Ukraine is half a no-brainer. Immigration should be a no-brainer, but it's toxic to a lot of Democrats. Immigration, changing the border, so and we're going to get nothing.
Right.
So then you have to ask
Well,
yourself,
the one thing.
what law have they passed since we met here the last time? Nothing.
The one thing that you can say is sending money to the Ukraine, this sounds cold, but we're not sending American boys and girls.
Well,
You
no,
know,
but I
at
mean,
least we're not getting into, we're going to put our kids.
Well, the same with Israel. And but,
same
by the
with
way,
Israel.
but a lot of Israeli Americans have volunteered to go over and fight, and that's a commendable thing. You saw a lot of the flights were allowed. That brought a lot of, and then of course the catastrophe there is for Israel is, and I know people in Milford whose families are there now. We won't go into names, but it's been a catastrophe for the Israeli economy, because the Israel economy.
Well,
is,
you take that many people out of the
Okay,
economy,
but
what do you
and also-
expect?
exactly, and then also just on the families, on the psyche of the country, and the fact is, no Israeli, even the most liberal, is going to go with a two-state solution. When you heard these people, when they were murdering people, going, they didn't say I killed an Israeli, they said I killed a Jew, and they didn't say I killed what do you call it? They went right to the core of what the hatred is. Not they claim it's Israel, and then you get to the other thing. We're diverting a little, but how did Hamas, which got billions in foreign aid, they said they used child labor to do those tunnels. They had factories where they were taking dud bombs and making them into other things. So they took all that money that was given for foreign aid, instead of building desalination plants and hospitals, they diverted this for tunnels and terror.
Well, the whole question comes up about should we be supporting UNRWA?
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, it shocks me when I hear 10% of the 30,000 people that work for UNRWA were part of Hamas.
Yeah, and we provide, between us and Germany, we provide 70% of the budget for UNRWA.
I was gonna say, it's following the money, right?
It's a sucker
And and it's the money that goes over, like who's in charge of following
Yeah,
that,
and-
right?
and you know, I
is
mean,
we
yeah.
can't continue to write out blank checks.
No, and
Right.
again, as someone who lived in New York for a while, the UN diplomats were the greatest scofflaws in the world. They park anywhere they do. They didn't care. I mean, it was like, hi, and it's like, so, you know, it's a thing that, ironically, when you have a administration this so weak and feckless, that Iran is the master manipulator here, but behind Iran is Russia, and here it is up here. You know, the border's right here. Iran has been allowed to manipulate all these tools without being punished. Remember
How do you
John
punish him?
Kerry? Remember John Kerry, and he was going to do the nuclear deal because the Iranians had. Well, John Kerry beat it out of the thing, didn't he? Remember he told everyone that we were being stupid. Then Obama gives, how many billions of dollars did Obama send over? $6 billion or something or more?
To Iran, yeah.
You remember that?
$6 billion,
I
yeah,
remember the
then it was
planes and the
frozen, yeah.
pallets.
Was it
full of
60
cash.
billion or was it a
It was
huge
6.
amount? 6?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
still, you turn around and you say, what can you do? Do you bomb Iran?
No.
I mean, at the end of the day,
But again,
you got to do something
when-
to stop.
when
Right,
you're,
which they did. We're starting.
Yeah.
Biden is finally starting to take action.
yeah,
you
whatever
know,
it is.
But only I think because of the political pressure,
Well, and-
because of the three service
3 people got
individuals
killed.
that had
Yes.
died
Yep.
because
When
of
you see the
attacks,
pictures of
right?
when you see the pictures of the 3 servicemen, and you personalize it,
Right.
that's what Americans need to realize. Hey, it isn't just a so and so died. You look at 3, a woman and 2 men, and you go,
Right.
oh boy, where were those kids from? And then you realize they're from, I think they were from Alabama or whatever, and they're like, God Almighty, you know, they're whatever, and you go,
But again, what can you do? I mean, I see
Well,
them
you-
bombing Houthi targets.
okay,
Okay.
what's the matter with that?
Oh, I don't. Is it enough?
Right. I think you just got to keep. Yeah.
Yeah, you
I mean,
just have to-
You have to be very strategic.
Remember, the Chinese have always figured us out that we're not persistent. The
Just wait a sec.
Putin
Putin has said he's going to wait out America.
and the same with
That
Ukraine.
eventually,
Yeah,
in the Ukraine, he will win because America will get tired.
yeah, and you can see already that the fact is with the drones and everything. I mean, there's going to have to be peace there, but the Ukrainian, the country of Ukraine that comes in is going to have to be protected because remember, when they gave up their nuclear weapons, they had more nuclear weapons
Yep.
there than in Russia, and they gave those up for the promise
Of protection.
of protection. Well, okay, anyway.
But you know something?
So
That to me was one of the smartest moves, because if I was the Ukraine and it came down to the end, would I use the nukes to save my
No.
people? No, exactly,
Press the button.
Chris.
no, but
Press the
the thing is, no, the point is, if just having them prevents you from being invaded. Would be the point. Never mind what we're talking about now. But if the Ukraine had its nuclear weapons, we wouldn't even be talking about an invasion. No one would dare do a thing. You know that. That's what they're for. A deterrence.
I guess too, and you go back to 4, 5, 6 years ago
Yeah.
when things in that area were much more stable,
Yeah.
right? And now all of a sudden this administration
Oh.
has come into play, right? And things are starting to get very, very unstable. Now it originally started as just Israel and the Gaza, the Palestinians and the Israelis, right? But now it's expanded, and without the U.S.
And here
getting
is
involved, right?
Yeah.
So now it's expanded
Yeah.
and it's killing U.S. service members.
And
So-
here's Iran with a country that was on economic skids. So how do they provide the billions of dollars to arm the Houthis, to arm the people in southern
You
Lebanon?
know how they're doing it? They're discounting oil to India,
No, I'm
to
not-
China.
no, I'm
they're
just
still
I'm raising
selling.
the question. So they have done all this stuff for a decade, 2 decades, with very little action from us. In fact, with the Obama administration trying to do that, oh, don't become a nuclear power and we'll give you this money, which is now we know is a fraud. It was an outrage that John Kerry even proposed it. Is to me, well, I won't even say it, but at least he's out of the way. So it's crazy, but it's a crazy, and I think a lot of it's just because of the weakness in the president doesn't project power; he projects weakness, and he's he's just doddering, I guess the only way to describe it, because his appearances and even the press secretary she would be pilloried if she were Republican with the lack of
answers that she
preparation.
gives, yeah.
She comes in and she plays every card there is, it's just
Well,
crazy.
the one thing I'll believe is that a lot of the advances that countries make, they wouldn't have made if Trump was at the helm. Because you don't know how he would react.
What do you mean by advances?
The Iranians supporting how many splinter groups to
Oh, yeah,
attack
Right.
the U.S.
Yeah.
Do we believe for certain that Trump wouldn't have pushed the button? Not the nuclear button, but sent
But
cruise missiles?
I'm all in, right? Like
Yeah.
he's throwing the cards on the table. He's pushing.
He's
his-
saying, okay,
yeah,
we told
putting
you
all
you
his
can't
chips
sell
in.
oil.
Yeah.
You're selling oil.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
no.
Now your fields are gone.
Yeah, but it isn't the weapon. There's so much stuff. There's cyber warfare. I mean, we are up against the Chinese, who have whole parts of their army dedicated to cyber warfare. You know that. They're in Shanghai, they're in cities. They have divisions of the army. They're not soldiers.
They're here in the US
They're
too.
hackers. Yes, they're hackers. They're here as graduate students or whatever. And we have nothing. We have nothing. But we have arguments like, is Harvard a racist institution or this or that or whatever else is going on? And you're seeing the decrepit nature of even our education system. Some of the finest colleges and universities have been revealed as shells that just, it's amazing what's going on in these schools. It's just crazy. What is this, this affirmative wokeness or whatever, it's taken over these places.
Yeah, but isn't that always university?
Well,
They're very liberal. Right?
Of course
Like
they are.
always
They're-
have been.
but we're-
right?
but we're talking
then those students graduate and they get into reality, and
But-
all of a sudden they're.
but
they're,
It was like my daughter the
political
first time she
change.
got a paycheck
Yeah.
and said, "What is all this tax
Right.
being
Well-
taken out?" And I said, "Remember those ideas you had that you wanted to fund?
Yeah.
There they are."
How it is,
But
exactly.
we're talking about this, whatever it is, that DEI or DI, whatever that, that
The
stands for.
inclusion and
Yeah, inclusion, something.
diversity,
Okay.
equity, inclusion.
I mean, you have now the head of that department at Harvard revealed as a gross plagiarist. But when you have groups among African American populations who spend their entire career in that field of I'm a victim, my people are a victim, or whatever, then you look at what's going on. I mean, I was told that white students at Harvard have to go through an indoctrination class, orientation class that talks about white privilege and the sins of white people. That's one of the things they're required to do. Now, I'll be interested to find out if that's true, but I would tend to think it is. And it's mandatory when you're as part of your orientation program when you're accepted and you matriculate. You start to go to school. So, it'd be very interesting to see if what is going on in these schools to the stage of where we've got to that level of thinking, because once you start to adopt that thinking, well, then everything's fine. I can do whatever I want because my people are victimized or whatever.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but
you
what?
got to believe that the students are smart enough to eventually see through it.
Wait a minute, though, but pressure's a big thing. And who in a class, once you start taking things like that, is going to articulate conservative
Because I see a lot of
well,
True.
marches, and I say, I can be pro-Palestinian,
okay.
but be anti-Hamas.
But they can't.
Right.
That's apparently.
Right.
Because
I mean,
from the
you
river
can-
to the sea is not exactly a...
No, that's an extremist view.
Well, okay.
But you sit there and say, wait a minute. I can't support anybody who would decapitate kids,
But Al,
who would take on women,
well, what does that
children.
mean, though? The fact is...
That's Hamas.
I understand that, but the point is, if you said that in those countries, your life would be in danger. These aren't, what's
But-
a simple
Well,
thing.
we know that's how Hamas came to power, right?
I just mean
by
even in this
doing
country.
But the
very strong
Palestinian
hand
people,
fist.
I got to believe there's a whole bunch of them that would like to have a family, home,
Right.
the American dream.
Exactly. Right.
That's in Michigan, by the way.
Yeah.
So.
So, from that end,
No, but again, when you have extremists who come in, I mean, you get into the nuts and bolts, but when you have 500,000 people or 1 million people in London protesting, when you have all these giant demonstrations, ironically, you have Jewish Americans who are a very liberal political group who who normally would back all this going, wait a minute, now I'm being called names and I'm being, say, like the president of Harvard couldn't answer, it was hate speech to kill all Jewish people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess your lawyer wrote that for her, but didn't work very
You know,
well.
and-
But see, we've had that discussion here when the skinheads came to Milford. I have nothing in common with 99.99% of their views, except for one thing. As long as they don't try and get violence involved, they have the right,
Right.
as Americans, to be stupid. That pesky First Amendment
Right.
says you have the right to have an opinion that I think is stupid,
Yeah.
just like I have the right.
Yes.
Push your agenda, but
Except,
don't do it
except when you
violently.
advocate verbally, just like you call fire in a theater, when you advocate for extermination of people.
Well, but again,
because of-
that crosses the line
well,
to me.
Right.
Guess what?
You know,
Gee, that's
Advocating
really,
for the Palestinians to have a homeland. I can't fault that. That's human nature. Advocating for Hamas to kill a group of people,
well, just say what it is, kill Jewish
kill
people.
Jews.
Kill
Yeah,
Jews,
exactly.
right,
That's
yeah.
what it is.
I mean, they're just, I mean,
That-
they're indiscriminately just, launching rockets into.
And that's that whole thing from the
into,
river
Israel.
Jordan to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
sea.
whatever.
Right.
I mean, that is just not
we could go-
advocating peaceful.
We could go into,
Yeah, that's a
we could go
whole
into a
long
whole,
conversation. Yeah.
scenario on that one, but that's crazy. But we sort of covered a lot of stuff, but we mixed it all up together.
I think it all came together.
Yeah, we didn't do one topic or another, we sort of mixed everything, because they're all linked. But I think, from my point of view, part of the whole thing is this whole, the Biden administration being so, projecting weakness and projecting really incompetence, and the signals it sends out to the world. Maybe Europeans might like Biden as opposed to Trump, because Trump told them where to get off, but the fact is that the enemies in the world just sort of see weakness.
But see, a
Well-
lot of things like Abbott gets a label that he's a racist, he's this, because he shipped immigrants all over the country.
Well, that's what the U.S. government's doing right now, by
Oh,
the
I
way.
was going to say,
Wait a minute.
Right.
The non-governmental organizations, what do they call them, NGO?
NGOs.
They're spending billions of dollars to fly immigrants, and
Well, it
that's
used to
from the
be
Biden
that they flew
administration.
immigrants at night to different, but at the end of the day, I can't blame the guy saying,
But
we
look-
can't handle it.
Yeah, but
Right.
wait a minute, but
The bucket's
let's
only so
let's
big.
get to the person who's doing the real numbers. That's the Biden. Why,
Yeah.
again, the media picked on Abbott,
Yeah.
who, by the way, is a handicapped gentleman who, he doesn't show up, but he's in a wheelchair.
But the
So I'm just pointing that out to
fact
people.
is, in my mind,
So-
he's trying to do the best he can for
course he
Texas.
He has to, yeah.
And what was he hired to do or elected to do? The best he can for Texas.
Right. And
And if
Texas
he-
only has so much
If
capacity.
he hadn't bust people out,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be having these
Oh,
discussions.
it was so beautiful though to land in Chicago. Going, what am I doing here? I'm afraid.
Right. Land in Chicago, land in New
Well-
York, land in, yeah. Land in
It'll go
Boston.
on, and when we get back together in 3 months, we'll see if anything has really changed. We'll have some more primaries under our belt, and we'll
Yep.
see what's happening. To our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Al.